Welcome to Paris Undressed, the podcast where we go behind the scenes of the lingerie capital of the world to explore femininity and sensuality. My guest today is Anne Marsella, a Paris-based writer whose work has been published in both English and French. She is the author of a short story collection, The Lost and Found and Other Stories, which received New York University's Elmer Holmes Bobst Award. Her novels, Remedy, Patsy Boone, and The Baby of Belleville, are all set in Paris and explore what Anne describes as the contours of a woman's psychic landscape and its shifting emotional climate. She is also the founder and the curator of Madame du Châtelet Productions, a literary salon in Paris that celebrates the feminine erotic and explores the connection between language and sensuality of the body. Welcome, Anne, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Kate. Pleasure to be here.
In The Baby of Belleville, protagonist Jane Maraconi de la Rochefoucault, which I can never say properly. It's always easy to read French words sometimes in the pronunciation. But Jane certainly embodies these contours and emotions. There are many sides to Jane, as there are to many of us. She's a young mother, a grown-up daughter, a resistant daughter-in-law, a writer, a wife, and an expat, which of course is a familiar theme that resonates for many of us. She also has good bra days and not so good bra days, which I thought was a great place to start. Without giving the plot away, Jane also has connections to the mob. And as the story unfolds, it turns out that Jane is the one that must kind of come to the rescue to solve things. What I want to get to is while she's in the midst of all this, and it is a life and death moment in the book, I just want to read a very short paragraph. Jane is in the midst of doing what she feels compelled to do, and it is a very dangerous situation. Listen, I won't be in any danger. Promise, I insist, making a cross over my chest for emphasis, following the lines of my Playtex Cross Your Heart bra. I'm surprised to feel that crisscrossing ribbing. I had forgotten I was wearing it. The bra was given to me by Mother and is only put into service when we are behind on laundry. So I think that's hysterical, that while compelled to save many from death, that Jane is reminded of she's wearing her bra that she would rather not be wearing because she missed the laundry cycle. And I thought this would be a great place to start for you to tell us, Anne, about your first bra.
My first bra was bought on an expedition to Sears, which was if you remember Sears, I don't think it exists anymore, but it was a real middle class kind of department store. And I remember my mother, I was very excited because I thought it was just wonderful to start having breasts. And I used to always put on my mother's bras and stuff from the toilet paper. And I just was very excited about it. And I was hoping for something very beautiful. And I got something that was okay. My mother was not very excited about it. And but I remember it being satiny and had a little rosebud at what is it called again? Right here at the
between the cups, just at the gore.
At the gore, that's it. I'm trying to remember all. You've taught me all this, and I've forgotten the gore.
Do you remember how old you were for this?
I believe I was I was 12.
Okay,
I was 12.
Not quite a teenager.
Being in sixth grade. Yeah, I was in sixth grade, and the bra was a little bit wrinkly. It was a little bit wrinkly, and that dismayed me. Just wasn't, it was okay, but it wasn't, I was dreaming for something really extraordinary. And it wasn't, my mother just didn't follow my desire for that. I think she was just getting the job done.
Okay. Well, Sears, I do remember Sears, and it was all about the catalog as well. So did you actually pour through the catalog ahead of time, or was it straight to the store?
We just went straight to the store.
Okay.
And got it. But I was thinking about the Playtex bra. That's reminiscent of the advertisements growing up on TV, the commercials with Jane Russell. Do you remember those commercials? And
I do remember that.
Yes. She was a sex symbol, and there she was talking about Playtex Cross Your Heart bra, and with her, cone-like breasts, and so it was such a functional bra, and yet she was such a sex symbol. I always thought it was very interesting, the contrast.
Well, and she was sexy, and I remember thinking there was quite a masculinity to her as well. Yes. And I remember hearing and hearing what other people said about her that was sexy, but I didn't get it. I thought that she looked womanly, but I wasn't sure womanly was something I was aspiring to if it was going to look like that. I wasn't sure what to do with it. She looked strong, so it was
She looks
really,
strong. Yeah.
yeah, she looked strong, so that was all great. But I didn't. It sort of confused me
It is
in the
confusing.
messaging.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh. It's very there's something very contradictory about it. Because she's not soft and feminine. She's busty and strong, and yes, she has a masculine side. A bit like Mae West as well. Though Mae West is the blonde, but still very masculine.
What was it like for young Anne in California?
Well, I our family was very Catholic, very religious, and so there was that aspect of the upbringing. And I remember it was really strange. I remember thinking, I guess I was around 7, 8, and talking with a friend from who also went to the same parish. And I remember telling her, well, the word body is a bad word. And she's like, no, it's not. I said, well, yes, it is. It's just, well, they say it in mass. And I couldn't explain why I thought it was an evil word. And it's so interesting now looking back at that somehow the message that the body was a dangerous place, that it was, that it produced evil. I also remember I've always been extremely tactile and sensual. And I remember as a child, I had a pillow and I would take the pillowcase off and the pillow was actually satin. And I would just rub my cheek against it. I loved the sensation of that. But it was very private. It was a very private thing. And one time my parents had, what was my dad's best friend? We called him Uncle Stu. And he came over and he kind of came into my room like he was going to say goodnight. And I was doing that. And I felt embarrassed. I felt so violated, that I was doing something which room was very intimate.
Yeah.
But anyways, and that there's something maybe shameful about it.
That you felt caught. You felt caught at something, but at a time where you got caught, it didn't feel right. It felt dirty. It didn't feel like that when you were doing it in privacy.
No, exactly. So it's this whole idea about shame and the body and whatnot. So there was that, and at the same time, my mother would let us freely, play with her wardrobe, and we were always putting on her bras and her lingerie, and like I said, stuffing with toilet paper and putting on her. She had all these kind of ball gowns from high school or college. I don't know. And we played dress up and
who's the we? Are you sisters, brothers?
My sisters.
Okay.
Yeah, I had two sisters and usually my older sister and maybe a friend,
Okay. So there was freedom to express, and self-expression was something that was validated and
yeah, I think so. There were conflicting messages, but overall, I loved the whole idea of being a woman. I loved being a girl, and the idea that I would grow into this beautiful body, which is the female body, and I aspired to that. I have a lot of friends who were more tomboys and who really upset. I think my sister was upset, to get her period and whatnot, and I just look forward to everything. It's like, another adventure.
So from a very early age, you were very confident in your body. Has that confidence followed you through as you progress through the different stages of what it means to be female and a woman?
It pretty much has. There are challenges along the way, aren't there? I mean, especially at this stage. I'm 56, and the body really changes with menopause, and it's also integrating those changes. But it's so interesting because I feel so much more just confident in who I am and more knowledgeable and just a wiser soul.
There's a wisdom that comes with the
There's
age.
There's a wisdom that comes with it. Yeah.
There is a, I don't know if it's regret. I'm more in awe now with my body as what it did and what it was actually capable of doing, more than I was when it was actually doing it.
Absolutely. That's it. Yeah.
I was almost, I didn't have a lot of self-confidence I had a lot of self-confidence, but it wasn't in the body. But there's wonder in the body now. I used to think about it as regret, but now I look back at more as it's a thank you for what it's done and an appreciation for it. But it doesn't erase all those years of not feeling that. But in Baby of Belleville, as I was reading it, and what a command of language you have. And it's musical, but you're not afraid of talking about what the body does. I mean, quite a lot of time Jane is in the bathroom. And very, very human bodily things are happening in the bathroom. This knowledge of the body and what it does and this pride of what it does is so prevalent in your writing. Did that start out that way? Or did you just end up finding out that you were writing about the body?
Yeah, well, this is the book about motherhood, isn't it? So actually the original title was The Mother of Honoré. That's what I wanted to call it, because my idea was that in Egypt, for example, the mother is called by the name of her first child. There's a famous singer, Kulthum. She actually never had children, but she calls herself the mother of Kulthum. And I like the idea of when you become a mother, it's like you're giving birth to yourself, a new person. It's almost like a new existence. And that existence is so fleshy. It's so much of the body. And it's confusing in the mind. And the beginning of the novel, sort of her mind's going all over the place. And that's the way it feels. It's very chaotic, with all the feedings and getting adjusted to, especially when you're nursing, but even if you're not, the newborn is extremely needy, and it's attending to all the daily life. And I guess we don't talk a lot about, there's almost, it's not considered literary, to talk about certain things of the body.
Mm-hmm. Or its excretions, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And yet everything's worthy of literature. Everything's worthy of that kind of language, of that conversation, which is so often, for me, listen, men have been writing about war. You read Hemingway, it takes you, into, I'm thinking of the Red Badge of Courage. There's so many novels about war, and that's but the woman's battlefield is her body. It's what it goes through. And it just hasn't been given very much time in literature, I don't think. And I wanted to just be frank at the same time, give it an elevated language, just sort of take what's very basic and yet give it beauty through language. That's what I was trying to do.
You give it beauty and you give it humor.
And humor. Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
As you were talking, I found one of my laugh out loud moments. Can I read it? Can I read your own words to you of what made me laugh?
Thank you.
And it's Jane, our heroine. Oh, Honoré, what's wrong, love? I held up my arms and took him from Adele's shoulder. Did a fly land on your nose? But I could tell it wasn't. Honoré needed his milk fix, and fast. I placed him in the football hole position and sprinted to the black vinyl seats in the very back. The foam stuffing was popping out like spongy innards of a French cheesecake, the kind that are burnt on top on purpose. But neither Honoré nor I minded the lumpy sofa. Our main mission was to milk, which we got to very quickly. A bit of fumbling at first, but then Honoré latched on to his laughing source of sustenance. While I can't say I find nursing pleasurable, it never fails to relax me, to loosen the grip of daily pressures and concerns. It limbers the mind, loosens the joints, paves the way for transcendence or sleep. I do wonder what particular illuminations Simone de Beauvoir or Virginia Woolf would have had they written under the milky spell of breastfeeding. Might they have spawned a new literary genre or movement? Imagine us now referring to boobsbury or Brencestentialism. I lost it. I really did. Boobsbury or I can't even say it. Breastestentialism. Breastestentialism. Honestly. And there's just so many little moments like that you give space to in the body.
Paris Undressed will be right back after a word from our sponsors. When former college roommates Joanne and Britt join up for a hike in the Colorado Rockies on Joanne's 25th birthday, they're prepared for a light, fun, 4-hour walk culminating in delicious birthday barbecue.
You ready? Britt, are you putting on lipstick?
So what?
So we're about to go on a 4-hour hike up the Rockies.
So? Mother Nature will appreciate the effort.
But when they decide to follow a mysterious arrow in the woods, things take a turn for the bizarre.
Hey, wait, this rock has an arrow painted on it. Was that yours?
I don't remember an arrow.
Should we follow it? Maybe it's a sign.
We don't want to get lost, though. There's only this one trail.
Well, let's just take a little peek. What could possibly go wrong?
With not much more than lipstick, dental floss,
Dental floss?
and their own senses of humor to get them through, Will they survive against Mother Nature, unexplained occurrences, and an abandoned town that may not be abandoned after all? Babes in the Woods, an original comedic mystery series. Wednesdays on Paris Underground Radio.
And now, back to Paris Undressed.
I think that of course this has changed, but particularly in literature, I think that there's a real divide between the body and the mind, as if literature were, because it's words, purely intellectual, or the woman who writes is disconnected and very much of her mind. But I don't think that's true at all. And I think that Virginia Woolf and Simone de Beauvoir were very much in their bodies as well, actually. I think there's something very erotic about writing, in finding words, and also being alone, just that intimacy with a story and the words. And I mean, as soon as I have time to really write, and I can sequester myself, and I find it to be a really erotic space, and it's hard to explain why or how, but it's very much of the body. I feel all kinds of sensations in my body when I write.
The sensations come to your writing, or your writing, is it a two-way street?
It's hard to explain, but I think I feel them in my body, and then I feel that the words evoke, you mentioned the sound of how it's sort of musical, the writing, and it's also through the ear and how I'm hearing the language, and it's like a composition, and so it has a vibration, and it's sort of, that's what ends up happening. And it's and I like to surprise myself. I know I'm writing well when I can surprise myself.
So the writing, I guess I have a couple of questions. One, why your command of the French language? Because one of your books, Patsy Boone, I believe, is written in French. Just how did you become so linguistically lyrical?
Well, I was a French major, and then I came here to study with a French writer and feminist named Hélène Cixous, and I'd read her seminal text called Le Rire de la Méduse, The Laugh of the Medusa, and where she compels women to write with her body, and so that just I wasn't really writing at that age yet. I wasn't really writing fiction, and yet that spoke to me, and enough to come over and want to work with her, to study under her.
And you understood it. You understood what that meant?
I did. It called out to me. I didn't totally understand it. That's just why I wanted to come over. And as it turned out, she didn't, she had written that back in the 70s. And so what she was working on, and I came in 89, 90, she was basically working on slightly differently, working on what she called feminine writing, écriture féminine. It's interesting because I was thinking about, she invited Joseph Brodsky to her seminar, the Russian poet, and she asked him the question. She says, what is your relationship to your body when you write? And he thought for a moment, he said, well, I don't like my body. And he just dismissed it entirely. I thought it was really interesting. Yeah. So, and that's what I was referring to, this idea that one doesn't write with the body, one writes with the brain uniquely. It's this very cerebral exercise, and it is very cerebral, but
it's also what's validated.
Exactly. But the text is always of kind of flesh. For me, it's a flesh itself. It's creating this new flesh, and it has to come. You write from the senses, and the text must engage the senses of the reader. So if it's not written from the senses, it doesn't come alive. So it's interesting that Brodsky, he just hadn't considered it. And I think that's maybe more of a traditionally male perspective. And what I'm interested in is how women, I don't want to say naturally, but we're more inclined perhaps to bring the two together. I mean, because we're taught in patriarchy that the two are separated. It's like the virgin whore thing almost. That dichotomy. It's a dichotomy. She's brainy or she's sexy.
She's this
she's
or
one
that.
Or the other,
yeah,
and it's just absurd. We're both. Every woman is both, and should be able to express that fully in life and feel safe doing so. And we're not really there yet. We're getting there.
Is feminine writing the same as feminist writing?
No. She bases her theory on Freud's idea of libidinal economies. And so she'll say that feminine writing it's obviously can be done by men or women, but it would be writing that is concerned with an open relationship to the other, a writing that is polyphonic, expresses multiple points of view.
So by nature, it would be completely gender inclusive.
Yes.
Would it even have to have the word feminine anymore?
This is a trap. This idea, it's really a relationship to the other. It's how we welcome the other. She would say that, écriture masculine. She doesn't talk about masculine writing, but she does talk about the masculine as being, she talks about phallologocentrism, which is a term that Jacques Derrida came up with. And its language is inherently masculine, in fact. If you go into the dictionary, it's just surprising what you find, like the words to describe the vagina or the words to describe the penis. And you'll find it so negative for the female genitals and much more positive for the male. In my 1964 Oxford Dictionary, the definition of clitoris is a rudimentary organ of the female genitals. I'm like, did you have a wife? Did you have a girlfriend? Rudimentary? So, anyways.
That was the decade we were born into. So
yes.
Rudimentary. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, the caring. We are in the age of COVID, and it seems as if there's been an injection of understanding and compassion for the words understanding and compassion, and not necessarily things that just are kind of taken for granted that women do in the background. There actually is something incredibly binding and resourceful and caring and needed in these words and these acts, and they don't just happen.
They don't just happen.
And that society can't exist without them. And I remember at university, one of the first anthologies coming out of female writers, that there hadn't even been a collection of female writers in an anthology before. That an anthology of what they thought, or whoever the famous they are, was important, was just all male voice. So it's coming. And I probably would have been maybe a bit more patient about the idea that it's coming. I don't know. That just makes me almost annoyed that it's not faster now, that it's sort of...
I feel the same way, Kate. I feel the same way. I'm very impatient.
I've lost patience.
We're just so ready for it. It's just
so ready for it.
We have to put care at the center of our society.
Absolutely.
And there's a French philosopher, Cynthia Fleury. Cynthia, I believe that's her name. And she's actually talking about care, le soin, as a philosophical concept. And this is a first. So I'm thinking, okay, it takes a woman philosopher to bring this into the conversation and to stress the importance. It's like the basis of civilization. I'm really interested in looking at alternative ways of rethinking society around that, around how we care for one another and what that can create.
Well, as you're speaking, I'm thinking, there's certainly a language out there for the caring professions. There's enormous respect, but they don't talk about it with the same gravitas when you're talking about somebody who's stayed home to either look after their children or somebody who's now looking after aging parents. And I remember my mom was a nurse. I don't remember her as a nurse because she stopped nursing professionally when we were born, but she took it was her vocation. And my grandfather, my father's father, so not hers, came to live with us for 5 years before he died. And we were teenagers, my sister and I, so we were very much just concerned about our own lives. And yet my grandfather was with mom, and he had to have a hot lunch every day. So we just assumed that happened. And I remember mom talking about, he liked to go grocery shopping. And I also remember the frustration I had with my own mom when she didn't walk fast enough and I was trying to get from A to B, and I'm thinking back and, it really is our lives were improved because we had him with us for 5 years. My dad's job continued on because mom was, it just happened. But there was just nothing around it. It just happened. It just was. And when it came time for the idea of possibly the same thing happening with my mom, perhaps coming to live with us in France or anything else. Well, it just didn't work out with the Social Security and all the rest. But also at the same time, I don't think I could have done it. So it's an incredible value to society, and I believe ultimately in life length too. You know, that people can be, when you're part of something, and all those cultures where you're part of something, they live longer when you feel needed, when you have purpose, when you have community. And I think part of this COVID chaos that we're going through is we are all at a cellular level understanding what community means and the importance of it, and that it doesn't just happen, but there's an urgency to it. I don't, I do feel as if these human words aren't just something for literature or for lofty ideas and for UN meetings and then just on the street it all happens.
No, this is also one of the arguments for the basic universal income. Because it's the invisible economy. I had a young woman who was doing a doctorate at Sciences Po come to the École des Femmes, and she was doing her thesis on this. So this the invisible economy, it's just what you're saying, what just happens and doesn't get recognized and does not have a value attached to it that we we calibrate. And so she was researching that. And what would it cost if we were to, lots of economists have worked on this, but she had a slightly different angle, I think. But there is a real argument that we have to take care of each other, and that has a cost in terms of our time and our energy. And somehow, if we could alleviate perhaps some of the workload that we do in our jobs, that we can. If there's a means of actually doing this in a way that we can live more gracefully and healthily. So, good health, healthy planet, healthy people. This is what we want. And
healthy bodies, healthy minds.
It's absolutely healthy minds, healthy emotions. We talk about it, but I don't think there's enough belief in it, conviction that it's actually that important. And for me, it is.
Paris Undressed will be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Hi, welcome to Wine Dine Caroline's Happy Hour. I'm Caroline Connor, a wine expert living in Lyon, France, where I am otherwise known as Wine Dine Caroline. Now, this isn't your average wine podcast. You can join me at Happy Hour, where I'll be meeting with friends, new and old, to hear a funny, stupid, or just all-out ridiculous story from their life. And then I'll pair a wine with it. Join us for belly laughs, silliness, and lots of love. Cheers!
And now, back to Paris Undressed.
You mentioned École des Femmes, and I did want to talk about Madame du Châtelet and École des Femmes so that those who are listening can learn a little bit more about it as well. And the Madame du Châtelet Productions, this literary salon that you started and founded. Tell us a little bit about Madame du Châtelet, and in particular, her nipples, please.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So Emily du Châtelet was actually an astrophysicist. Sometimes she's called a mathematician, but the more I read about her, I realize she's really kind of an astrophysicist. And she lived in the 18th century, and she's known for two things: for being Voltaire's lover, also, or mistress, and lovers. Whatever, and for making the definitive translation of Newton. And she did more than a translation. She actually explained Newton to the French, because the French Académie des Sciences would have nothing to do with him. They were stuck on Descartes and they didn't want to move forward. Newton was, this English upstart, and they weren't interested. But she was really a fascinating woman, a fascinating character, because she was a very lusty woman. She was very much of the senses and had many lovers at the court of Louis XV, and very prominent men, was married. And that was very common at the time. In the noble classes, you would marry for reasons of money and family and patrimony. And then it was accepted to have your lover. So she lived very freely. And it's a very particular, really fruitful relationship with Voltaire. It was very much a partnership of the mind, also the body too. I don't think he was such a great, don't think it was so great in bed from what I read.
Oh, Voltaire.
Yeah. He self-confessed. He complained of his membre un peu molle, so but mou rather. She was way ahead of her time, and they find out now there's academics who are looking at her work more closely, and they think that she was actually onto understanding black holes. She's just way ahead of her time.
Okay, yeah.
And Voltaire was very much about the movement of history, and he was headed towards the revolution. And she wasn't. She was in the cosmos. She was in a very different place. When I first read about her, it was just an article in the Guardian about some book that had been written about her, and I was completely fascinated, and I became infatuated with her. And I've been reading about her. Now I'm reading Nancy Mitford's Voltaire in Love.
Oh, fabulous! Yeah,
which talks about their relationship. But it's her way of being a woman of the senses of her. A lusty woman is very much in her body, but also just a genius. And being able to live
and owning that.
And owning it, in an incredible way, even for the time, she hadn't been, most women of her class would go to convents, but she hadn't been given, her father wanted her to have tutors at home. And so she wasn't put under, in the influence of Catholicism. And so she was very free. She was a free spirit, free mind, and her mind traveled far. The only thing that held her up, now interesting, the thing that held her up was, sadly, there was no real contraception at the time, and she ended up getting pregnant around 42 or 43 by this young man.
Was it quite late?
It was, and she died not in childbirth, but I believe that she died from mastitis. I think it was something related to that, because women did not breastfeed. The noble ladies didn't breastfeed, so and that could be a problem. Anyways, she died in a very tragic and sad way.
That is tragic.
It ended sadly, but she lived so passionately, while she was alive, and she left so much in her wake.
And you decided to
wanted to celebrate that.
And about her nipples.
Yes. Okay. So she was also, apparently she wore wild dresses, and the dresses at the time, they would go underneath the breasts a little bit, so the nipples would stick out. Right. And that was a style at the time. And she rouged her nipples, and she started that fashion.
Right. And so rouge is that sort of making pink, that reddening of, to highlight.
Yes.
I just think that combination of smarts and sass and confidence, when she must have been starving in her mind as well for more information.
She was, absolutely, yeah.
And just having this this audacity and confidence to be able to be both. I'm going to rouge my nipples, and I'm going to be a genius, and I don't have to pick. And so in your salon, you would invite women artists, women writers, embodying their work. And there was always an element of performance. There was this encouragement to somehow express your art through or with your body, even if that wasn't how the art was conceived or portrayed in regular formats, right?
Absolutely.
Was there a lot of convincing? Did the artists and the writers, did everybody know they could do something through their body, or did there?
I think that not everybody was certain they could. Mm. We became a collective, and it was interesting. We gave each other permission. Mm. And there's a lot of it with Sarita Baraha, who's the director of it, and has had incredible insights and vision and a sense of the stage.
I'll just set the stage for those of who are listening, is to give an idea that this salon is held in Anne's apartment, where she generously opens and shares, and is followed by some sort of gastronomical gathering and sharing of food and wine. But in the apartment is completely transformed in theme and using every room. And in this one particular evening, it was the bathroom. And yes, the author Shannon Kane was reading from the bathtub, full of water and full of bath suds. But as everybody knows, bath suds do pop and go away. Yet Shannon's bath, it was just a remarkable, and we were all crowded into this bathroom listening to the reading, and she's very funny as well. Was it fun?
It was very fun. Yeah. It was very fun to do that. I love doing projects with other women. I mean, we had so many laughs, less stress too, but but so many meals together, so much to share,
Yeah.
and wildness, and just it was very touching too.
Yeah.
Touching to every woman was vulnerable. Shannon was very vulnerable, in the bathtub, and she was very nervous about it. And we talked a lot about it, and she wasn't sure she could actually do it.
Yeah.
So we talked about it.
Yeah. There's such a fine line between it working and then completely not working.
Absolutely.
Did you find it a collective courage that sort of came out as well? So was everybody a bit more this gathering of creative energy and possibility and daring, I guess, help fuel everybody's own creativity?
It did, and some I know Veronica Charnley, Canadian songwriter and singer. She produced work for the salon that has gone on to her albums. It was very generative for her. It was she kept saying, "We're going to be doing another salon," because it got her inspired to write around a theme.
Okay, and École de Femme. Tell us a little bit about École de Femme.
Well, École de Femme was more. It was a little bit different. École de Femme is a workshop in women coming together and exploring their embodiment, exploring what it is to be women through dance, movement, all kinds of stuff, and creativity. It's a lot about just, because I think that being creative, I think that women are inherently creative. It's just when we connect with our, lack of a better word, our sexuality, our sensuality. I think that's it's just so creative, and so it's helping women, go reconnect with that part of themselves.
Well, reconnect for those who are already on their way, but connect, for the many of us who didn't even know what sensuality meant to begin with,
Well, that's right. And it's a surprising number of women who say, they'll come to the workshop and they'll say, I just don't know what it means to be a woman. I'm so masculine. I mean, we're basically, women are in today's, Western society, we are pushed to function in a world that's been constructed for men, so to speak. I'm not even sure it's not even good for men, huh?
No, it's not even. No, it's not even good. It's not good for anybody.
But men are kind of like, I have a colleague at work, and he's like, my body's my truck. It gets me places, and that's a very male. I can never think my body as my truck. But I think that men are trained to think like that, like they just go, it's like this linear thing. You just go forward, and women we don't function that way, and we can't. And when we do, we get sick.
Yeah.
So I think that women are we're just forced to be very masculine in the society. It's what is encouraged. It's what's rewarded. And so when you bring women together and you say, well, we're going to explore what it is to really be female, and we're like, wow, I don't really know. I'm just so out of touch. I don't know what it feels like to be in my body. I haven't really taken the time.
And for all kinds of ages, whether you've had children or not had children, I certainly, in my conversations with women, I hear this all the time. And I know from myself as well, just because your body does things because it's female doesn't mean why it does it or how it feels. It doesn't, there's a level of connection that is very hard to put words to. There's a space to the whole thing. And it's an exploration, and you don't just stumble on the language of body ever. It's not an easy language to tap into. And I'm doing a lot of work with body sensations now, and it's elusive to me still. So this idea of, the felt senses, I think there's people who just get it and feel it right away and can't understand how somebody else can't. And then you find that people just can't possibly understand how what do you mean you know how you feel? I know what pain feels like, and I know what I don't want to feel, but it took me a long time. Pleasure is, we've had Julia Palome, well too, as well. And she only thinks in terms of pleasure.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
She feels her way into life. And it's lost on so many of us if you didn't have that innate sensibility.
That's right.
I think is hard. So creating a space where women can come together and you begin to even hear the language of what others feel, don't feel, think, don't think, you start, you naturally make comparisons, and then you're encouraged to explore. And I think that space of feeling safe too. There's
That's right.
there's sort of the reassurance. So that vulnerability, and it's a word we hear a lot of, vulnerability. And I, for a long time, sort of nodded in agreement, but in my mind thought, oh, that's weak. That's not a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing to be compassionate about in other people, but that's not something I can allow myself to be. So it's taken a while to, it's taken a while to just sort of take away the label of the judgment of the word and all the rest before you even have a chance to invite it in. Once it's in, can't say it's a lot of fun.
No.
But the quality of living and the access to the feeling part of life is certainly much
so
richer.
much richer, and you're so much more alive when you allow yourself to feel. I mean, it's just not,
Not the same gig.
That's been my journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same gig. That's
Mm-mm.
been my journey over the last, 6 years, 7
Mm-hmm.
years, and learning to feel.
Mm-hmm.
There was an exercise that I remember Regina Thomas-Hauer at the School of Womenly Arts gives, and it's really interesting. It's you have a notebook, and for every hour, on the hour, you write down what you feel. You take your notebook, you set a timer, you write down what you feel. And I just thought, well, this is kind of a stupid exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll just do it and see what happens. I was blown away. I had no idea what until I actually sat down and wrote down what I felt. That I just kind of, life just goes by,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not paying attention. And so that was the start of it. That was the start. Well, actually earlier than that, because I was doing Qigong, I did years of Qigong, and that really brought me into the sensate and to experiencing the present moment in my body. But then that was more on emotional levels, like my where I'm emotionally, and then learning how to ride the wave with my emotions, and learning to. And what's really interesting is what you find is that you can be like, we tend to not want to feel sad, or we don't want to go there. We don't go to the painful emotions. But what you find is when you actually go into them is that you come out on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you can go from, and this is what being orgasmic is. This is what really being a woman is. It's like you can go from pain and sorrow and really go into it and then dance it. I mean, for me, I have to go down on the floor and dance. I have to get down. I put my music on and I go down into it. And then I come up on the other side and I'm laughing, or I'm having an orgasm just from life. I'm not talking about a climax. I'm talking about an orgasmic experience of being the life energy coming through me. I think actually this year during COVID, I strangely, I didn't do that enough, I think I kind of went a little bit numb. I think there was so much I was trying to cope with in teaching and in a difficult context. And
yes, because in real life at the moment, Anne's a teacher at several different institutions. So life went from in class to online, and some people were more equipped than others online. And then, it's just been a year of
a lot of adjustment.
Paris Undressed will be right back after a word from our sponsors. And now,
If I ask you what it's like to be a Parisian writer, what do you imagine? Drinking noisette after noisette in a noisy cafe? Jotting down lines in your bedside journal while your lover fetches you fresh croissant? Stumbling down the streets overflowing with prose and red wine like Hemingway? Well, now's your chance to find out. My name is Jennifer Garrity, and I'm host of the Storytime in Paris podcast. In each episode, I chat with a writer with a French connection. The twist? The questions come from you, the writer's biggest fans and followers. Then our beloved writers will read us an excerpt from their books. So cozy up with a noisette, a croissant, or whatever's your pleasure, and settle in for Storytime in Paris on Paris Underground Radio.
and now, back to Paris Undressed.
I think it's a good time to mention that. Well, garter belts and stockings are always a very strong theme. And of course, Jane, our heroine in the Baby of Belleville. Well, so this would be great if you could set up Madame K.
Okay. So what happens is Jane gets this call from a very famous intellectual or from her secretary, Madame K. And it's actually based, here it becomes a little bit of a homo à clé because it is actually somebody very famous, referring to somebody. I don't know if I should say, I don't know. It's Julie Kristeva, I'll just say it. And so she ends up being her translator, but she's more than a translator. She becomes her kind of personal secretary, and it becomes, she's like a gopher to Madame K. And she calls her Madame K because it's like special. She calls her Special K as well, because she's like, that's how she earns her living. It's her breakfast, her bread and breakfast. So she's this very elite kind of high and mighty figure in the Parisian intellectual world.
And Jane has been called in to save a paper mess.
Yes, this is when she needs to get her passport done.
Yeah, she's been invited to go over to the U.S. and Jane has been called in to do all this paperwork. And there's a paper and the papers aren't quite right, so they've had to go off to the embassy. And no babysitter for baby Honoré. So baby Honoré is in tow as well, and the departure date is imminent. And so Jane and Honoré are in the lineup to go through security, and Madame K is just ahead of them. And this is what happens.
"A tout de suite," calls Special K over her shoulder as the officer waves his detection wand over her, insisting, a bit too conspicuously, over the lower region. She is standing cruciform like the Lord, and like him is subject to public humiliation. But she refuses the humbling and takes fast action. With her index finger, she delicately lifts her skirt high up the thigh to reveal her garter belt. It is a metallic hook that has sounded the alarm. But her elegant display of cuisse, of plump but shapely thigh, has piqued the officer's manly curiosity. He waves the wand over her thigh, up and over the garter, to double-check. She drops her skirt, holds her head high. She gains entry into the citadel. Only a Frenchwoman, I say to Honoré, can get away with that. If an American tried, she'd just be vulgar.
So I laughed and kind of cringed at the same time I read that, because I certainly recognized which one I was, or I would have been in the scene. And that's not even going through a security line. That can be at a cafe in Paris, and life in Paris, and just this sort of this understated ability to move one's body through space with a sense of being that the French seem to be a lot more comfortable with at times. And I wondered, when you were writing that, which side of the citadel were you on?
I think at the time I was writing that, I was probably on the wrong side. But I've since worked on that, and enjoyed working on that. And I've come around, and I enjoy those moments of jeune flirtation, and that you find that are available in France, and especially in spring, it's so wonderful to even be a woman, again, a middle-aged woman, and yet to have men flirt with you. It's very common. It just happens in Paris. It's really lovely. It's just part of the discourse, between people.
But there's also the accoutrement that we need. You need to have the garter belts and stockings. And as I've discovered, certainly in the writing process and in the living process, and actually as a supplier for many lingerie stores, the garter belt and stocking scenario isn't obvious even if you know what to do. Anne and I decided to celebrate our chance to speak together wearing our very own garter belts and stockings.
Sylvain garter belts.
And Servan, well, for Paris Undressed, Julia Palome was my key to understanding garters and garter belts and stockings. And I just thought it'd be fun to talk about that, wearing them as, foreigners, otherness in Paris, whether we might be wearing them outside of Paris, just what the whole process brings.
I think I had one before, and it never felt totally secure. And it was thanks to you and Julie that I found out about the Sylvain, and the fact that they have these 3 straps on each side is very secure, and they're metal, and they're fantastic. Actually, they're extremely comfortable. They're more, there's something not having the nylon around the crotch that's really nice. And and the fact that, I'm just going to say, put this out, that you wear your panties on the outside. And that's really the key to keeping it right. So that's important. That's an important detail that I learned from you.
It's an important detail that makes the wearing of them, brings it down to a practicality.
Exactly.
And that's not how they're showing in the ads. In the ads, they're all underneath. And what we're talking about by the 3 straps is actually in most garter belts that you see in ads, they're usually only 2 per side, which means a total of 4. But you need 3. And the metal closures make sure that the stockings stay in place. And quite often what you see are plastic ones. And that's all in that sort of language of seduction, of a night, of a moment where they're on and a moment that they're not off, and that they're not on, that they're off. But when you actually wear a garter belt and stockings that not only fit but feel secure, you wear them under your clothes. You know, they're part of your day, which is certainly something I learned in Paris, and because of Julia, and this sense of, I didn't know I could wear them under jeans.
Yeah.
You know, and so that seems to be that is my go-to now. I don't feel like the legs or the stockings or the skirts, and I live very far out of Paris, so by the time I get into Paris, I'd be all wrinkled anyway. But under jeans, there's a certain familiarity and ease with it all. There's a way of making it more you, as opposed to stepping into a déguisement, I guess. Right. Maybe is this very long-winded way of saying that you feel there's multitudes of ways of making this feel like you. And we've talked about this during COVID as well, and not just during COVID, but there's times where we can, as women, just sort of feel like we're slipping more into femininity and attention and then slipping sort of out of it, and lingerie drawers and our underwear drawers. And I'm just wondering, even with today, I know for me, just having to go put it on to speak, and we're speaking by video. We're not in meeting, and I'm not in Paris. There is no particular reason in the countryside why I need to be wearing a garter belt right now. But my day's different, and I'm sure my conversation's different as a result. And I'm just wondering, in that moment of when you actually decided to change for the conversation, is it the same thing for you? Is there a change? Can you feel a change?
Oh, completely, Phil. Completely. It's very, you could say, well, it's cliche, it's sexy, whatnot. It's not, but the sensations, like the stockings are very, these are the nylon, right? They're nylon, is that right? And they're nothing like the ones that, the pantyhose that one would normally buy. They're very silky. It's a completely different feel. This is really fun. I find it fun, and I feel very feminine. I feel very feminine in it. And I know Julie was saying that she feels strong and powerful in it. And I need to put this on and go to work. The thing is, I wear a lot of short dresses. And so you need to wear longer things. So I'll plan that out. And I don't really wear jeans. So.
And putting them on, was there a learning curve?
Yes.
I know what you feel by powerful. I still feel a little klutzy. But the sensations, as speaking as somebody who came late to the sensation world, having those different textures next to your skin, which you don't have in pantyhose.
No.
And and I'll put the all the links will be below. But the idea of a metal clip and the elastic and next to your skin, when you're talking about sensations and coming into your sensations, when your body moves, so do the things that you're wearing. So when you feel something cool next to your skin shift because you have, well, it just wakes you up. It adds a different perspective to the whole day. And I feel the space around me differently as a result.
Exactly. Well, I think listen, let's just be, it's attached to, it girdles you, it's at the waist, and it runs along your thighs. I mean, it's all very, it's a part of the body that is all too easy for a woman to forget, forget that that's where we're very extremely beautiful and powerful, isn't our,
we forget, or we tend to want to hide.
Or we want to hide it, which is a terrible thing. No.
Isn't that? Yeah.
And it's interesting because I've gained weight, and this first thing I said to you is like, I could barely get this garter belt on. But I did get it on. It's fine. But you know what? I'm sassy like this. And I did, during the confinement, I put this thing on and I danced burlesque and I filmed myself and I did these little burlesque dances. And it made me feel really good. It made me feel empowered. It made me feel like, this isn't shutting me down. The fact that I can't have a date at night, the fact that we're 7:00 curfew, I can't go out, can't see friends, I usually dance. I have a whole dancing practice but I can do my burlesque and put my garter belt on. I could do my burlesque and celebrate this body, which is, 10 pounds heavier. It's still great. Maybe it's even better.
It's even better. Well, it probably is. And it is an invitation. If you ever get a chance to attend any of Anne's workshops, which will, of course, be more available once COVID's out. Your workshops start with dancing. It's all part of your stepping into whatever creative power and energy you have, and dancing is part of it. And there's something extremely liberating about the dancing. Yes. And so, dance in burlesque, dance to burlesque, dance the burlesque in you, discover the burlesque in you. And there's always this sort of perhaps klutziness to get through. But then, there's a little bit of, cringeworthy, and then you're free. Like you've broken through another.
Yes. Exactly.
stratosphere of sorts, and how nice that even, you're 10 pounds heavier, says who, right? Already as a measure of says who, and that's just a state of being today that is neither a plus nor a minus on any other kind of scale, and to celebrate that. So, what a wonderful way to end. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Actually, what are you working on now?
I'm working on a novel, first draft, getting almost nearing the end. And I'm probably going to be teaching creative writing online. I've been teaching creative writing at universities. Yeah. And so I want to put together my own school, my own program.
And will Madame du Châtelet be attending?
I certainly hope so. Yes, absolutely.
I hope so too.
She's always there in spirit.
And what a model. Well, listen, thank you so much, Anne.
Thank you, Kate.
Anne, thank you so much for sharing this space with us. It's always an intriguing discovery and an absolute delight to explore how you feel your way into the language of sensuality and how you embody that language in your writing and in the world around you. Merci. And thank you all for listening to Paris Undressed. Paris Undressed is produced by Paris Underground Radio. For more on this show and shows like it, please go to parisundergroundradio.com.